Alrighty, so welcome. You've made it. We are at workshop 4 of the Tribal Civics project. So you all have completed everything, and tonight is really just about kind of learning your plans that you have, getting some feedback, input, and kind of sending you off on your way and learning how we can support you. So really excited. Of course, we always like to start with a quote. So tonight's quote is from Roger Whiteowl, which says, "In this modern day and age, our tribal government's biggest deficit is a lack of legitimacy with other governments and even their own people. A tribal civics course can and would help citizens see tribal government as legitimate governments and would revitalize our sense of self and belonging to a specific tribal nation and culture." So that's really the root of what we're trying to do here today is get folks excited about our tribal governments, excited about engaging in it, changing them, and being part of the community in that way. So yeah, we're excited to get started, and I'll have Michelle go over our agenda for the night.
Awesome, and great. Well, good evening, everybody. I'll briefly go over the agenda. You should have gotten this in your email, so hopefully nothing is too big of a surprise. After we're done with our welcoming and our opening together, we'll do a particularly fun kinship building activity, which you actually did hear a sneak peek about during our cross cohort gathering. But if you forgot, get ready. It's a good one. So we're really excited to hear what you have to say about this. And then, of course, we'll hand the floor over to you all at 5:20. You'll have about 25 minutes to give your presentation, share your ideas that you've been working on for the last month, and let us know the feedback that you heard from Ellen and I. This is also the other time, this is also the time when other folks from NGC may be joining us. I think you've seen a couple of them already here. Cree and Jessica are part of our community engagement and leadership development teams and work with the rebuilders. So some of you may know them already from that group. So just grateful to have them here with us, and they'll be able to provide feedback and thoughts around your presentation. I will be taking notes during that feedback session and through your presentation, so you don't have to worry about that and can just be present in the conversation, and I'll be sure to send those to you after the workshop. We'll go into a health break after your presentation, and then Levi Brown will share some lessons learned from Leech Lake Civics and answer any questions you all have for him. Following that, we'll have a quick 5-minute health break to help you refresh and push through to the last bit of the workshop, where we'll come back at 7:20 and spend the afternoon kind of closing out, talking about sustainability and 7 generations. Levi really will do most of that presentation, but really wanting to get you all thinking about how you want to make these programs sustainable to work for the next 7 generations. And then we'll do our closing and next steps. So yeah, we're really thrilled to have you all back here today and wrap up this workshop series together. Are there any questions about the agenda or what we'll be doing today? All right, hearing none. Before we get into our kinship building activity, I did want to go over our meeting agreements, just like always. It's been a little while since we've been together, so I will quickly read them off for you all again. We love to see your faces, but of course, if you need to turn your camera off at times, that's okay too. Feel free to use the chat box to engage. Like we're seeing kind of some rebuilders connection happening in the chat. We love to see that. As always, try and keep your mic muted unless you're speaking. We can also help to mute you if you can't find the button. And then when you're done contributing, let others know by saying that's it or thank you in your language. As always, we want everyone to have fun. And then finally, I loved this meeting agreement that you all added in workshop 1, which was to be good relatives. So at this moment, I'll pause and see if there's any other additions you would like to add for our last workshop together. All right, I'm seeing head shakes, no, silence. So I'll assume that these are good, and we'll go ahead and move forward and have some fun with our kinship and relationship building activity.
Alrighty, so that's my cue. So I know we've got some new folks to you all in the room, so we'll also use this as an opportunity to introduce ourselves as well. So I'm going to ask everybody to bring out a piece of paper and a writing utensil. Have that nearby. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. And so once you have your pencil and or pen or whatever you like to write with in a piece of paper, I want you to think about what is your favorite zoo animal, and I want you to write the name of that animal on your piece of paper. And it's really important. You cannot change it once it's written down. So write your animal and give me a thumbs up or an okay in the chat once you have your animal picked. All right, Jessica knows her animal. Got Tina's got hers down. All right, Nakina too. Cassandra. Cree. Carolyn. Jackie. All right, I think that's all of us. So we're gonna go around in the circle, and then since this is also our introductions, I'll have you say just your name and your role. So whether that's your community role or your role at NGC for our NGC folks are here, and then I need you to make the sound of the animal that you wrote down. So does anybody want to volunteer to go first? I see Nakina is unmuted and usually the one to go first, so I'm gonna
I
pick on
know.
Nakina.
I honestly, Nakina Mills, what were we supposed to introduce? Is that good? Our
Yeah,
title or introduce?
I also meant to say too, so whenever you hear the animal sound, you can't reveal what your animal is, and I want everyone to write down your guess at what that person's animal is, okay? And then we'll go through at the end and learn what folks' animals are. So, okay, so that's the full instruction. So yes, Nikina, just your name is fine.
Okay, Nakina Mills. Oh my goodness, I don't even know the sound they make. I
We
probably
won't do
shouldn't
any
have.
fact checking either, so.
I know. I'm looking up like, man. Okay. Oh my goodness. Uh,
Perfect. Thanks, Akina.
my
Uh,
attempt.
next, we're gonna go over to Jessica.
I should have picked a different animal. I think I've done this before. I knew better, but I'll embarrass myself. Bonjour, everybody. Jessica Glidden. I am the program manager for the Rebuilders program with our leadership development team at NGC. And I don't know y'all, but here's my.
Perfect. Love the gestures too. That helps a little bit. Feel free to get as involved and active in your animal sounds as possible. So we'll go over to Jackie next.
Oh no. So we don't reveal the animal, we just make the sound.
Yes, correct.
I'm just like Makina. Mm. Ooh, ooh, ooh.
All right.
That's all.
All right. Thank you, Jackie. Carolyn, you're next.
My name's Carolyn Niholi, and I work for the Oglala Lakota College here on the Pine Ridge Reservation. I'm the acting director, and um, okay, here I don't know if I can make the sound, so I don't know if you could hear it.
It's a little quiet. Do you want to try making the sound
Hold
with your
on.
mouth? Okay, yeah. Yep, I heard it. All right, thank you, Carolyn. Cassandra.
Hi everyone. I'm where I'm a rebuilder, and I'm currently working with the Oglala Sioux tribe with their Chihuahua initiative. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Cassandra. Tina, you're next.
Good evening. My apologies. For some reason, I wasn't able to connect to the sound. It wasn't letting me for a while. So I apologize if I missed anything. And good evening. I'm Valentina Merdanian. Capacity, I'm a rebuilder, cohort 1, and working with the Department of Interior BIA self-determination specialist. And so with that, I just had a hard time when I seen this, to be honest with you, because I don't like animals locked up in zoos. So that's why I had such a hard time picking an animal other than to say, well, what is my spirit animal? I think.
All right, there we go. That is great feedback. We should probably change this to just your favorite animal in general. So we'll do that moving forward. Thanks, Tina. And then that leaves Cree to be next.
Yes, so bonjour, my name is Cree Rose. I am a program coordinator with NGC, and I support the Rebuilders program as well as our community engagement program. And I have done this activity before, so I felt like a little bit of a cheater because last time I was very embarrassed, had no idea what sound an animal made. So this time stuck to something simple, and it just goes.
All right, yes, this is you get an advantage if you are at NGC because we've definitely done this one before. So, Levi, you are next.
But that's all I got.
Perfect. Do you want to introduce yourself too?
Levi Brown, citizen of Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe. Good to see you all.
Perfect. Thank you, Levi. And Alice.
Okay, this was a hard one. So Alice Perkins, OST, I'm the director for Employee Assistance Program. Okay, so I'm thinking it goes like, or skadoosh.
I like the options. Thank you very much. All right, that leaves Michelle.
Obviously, I know the game and I still pick a weird one, but I think that makes it more fun. So
Perfect. And then mine is moo. So what we're gonna do now is, does anybody have a guess at what the biggest animal was and who was that animal?
Elephant and Jess.
Jessica, was your animal an elephant?
It was an elephant.
Is there anybody else that had an animal that was bigger than an elephant? All right. Good work, Nikina. You figured that out. I do think the trunk was like a very good addition. So good thought there. And then the last question is, who was the smallest animal, do we think?
Michelle, for sure.
And what do you think Michelle was?
She was a mouse because of this.
what were you, Michelle?
I was like, I can't remember the name of the little rodent, but there's like a little, like, flying squirrel kind of thing that I saw that I was assuming that it was similar to that. So
Nice, nice. I had you down as a meerkat. So maybe similar vibes. I had meerkats on the brain though, because I had a couple of you as meerkats. So, was there anybody smaller than a flying squirrel thing?
What was Nakina? I thought I put fish question mark, but I didn't really hear it very well. I thought maybe there was bubbles.
I was an otter.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
So I
Yep,
had to
see,
answer with water.
you were my other meerkat. So same like body shape, just smaller maybe.
Mhm.
Anybody else want to reveal their animal?
Just Alice, mine was the panda.
Oh, I had
Remember
you
the
down as a seal.
oh, you didn't catch that. Do you remember in that cartoon when he wins that over that tiger? He says, "Skadoosh."
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
See, I heard the skadoosh is like jumping in the water. Like, awesome. Well, thanks for having some fun. I know when we're doing presentations, sometimes folks can feel nervous, and so sometimes it helps if we can all kind of make fools of ourselves together as a community and build kinship that way. So,
And I
with
must know,
that,
what was Jackie's boop, boop, boop?
oh yes, Jackie.
Mine was a panda.
Oh, okay.
I just hear them when they're rolling around making these little sounds.
I had you as a monkey.
Pretty
I
close.
also had it as a monkey too.
Oh, really? Well, the panda, I just seen him climbing the trees and everything, so almost there.
Awesome. Well, thank you, thank you. And so with that, we're going to go ahead and pass it over to you all to let us know what your plan is for your civics initiative. So, the floor is yours.
Did you guys get it in the email? Can you pull it up?
Yep, I think Michelle is working on pulling it up.
Okay. So I will go ahead and kick it off. So this is the title. This is the title of our initiative. So the Oglala Sioux Tribe Civic Initiative, igniting the fire, bringing light to your community by having a voice. Like after a lot of like discussion between the planning and everything, it was important to figure out how. I mean, I think it's so hard for, or again, not hard, but there's just a lot of challenges in teaching our young people, or at least allowing our young people to have a voice. So we thought like this project would focus a lot on our young people, primarily the student council, those because in our tribe there's about 23. I wish Dana was on because she knows the exact numbers, but there's around 23 schools on the reservation, on and off, like surrounding the border towns, and they're different types of schools. And they all have some type of like student council involvement or such, so that's kind of where our focus is going to be for this project. If you can go to the next screen. So our mission, definitely empowering through education, utilizing culturally relevant curriculum to strengthen tribal government by establishing a pathway to inspire future leaders to make a difference to the future of the Ochete Shakopee. What this Tribal Civics project will do is, like, our goal is really to just create an avenue or our voice for our young people that are just trying to find their way, to really give them the opportunity to be involved and engaged community members within the tribe. So we want to be able to provide like a curriculum, and we'll talk more about like some of the curriculum later in the presentation, but it's really guiding our pathways for the schools to be able to incorporate some of the curriculum or even a class into the school. For the school, we're still trying to narrow down like some other different ways that it's going, but at least this is like the main overview of what it's going to do. And it's really going to work to create like strong leadership, governance, and and our young people to kind of be more involved in the determination of our future as a tribe. So some of the things that it's gonna include is, there the opportunity to, of course, get involved, the opportunity to work with the elected officials, get to know the elected officials within your tribe, within your district, how to advocate and be engaged in that setting, being able to understand the governance, the tribal governance, breaking down into the standing committees. And then of course, the opportunity to be a part of council meetings or the drafting of legislation, resolutions, things like that. Really teaching our young people to focus on like the strengths and solutions. Of course, acknowledging the challenges, but thinking about solutions and strength-based approaches and how we handle being involved in our community. One of the other things we wanted to focus on was supporting voter engagement, because there's around 20 some thousand like members on the reservation. And when they do a tribal election, there's not that many turning out. So really getting the young people to understand how important it is to be able to have a voice in that avenue. And then also being able to share the historical and cultural knowledge from our tribe, from like the traditional societies that used to exist. Well, they still exist today. They're just not as out there. So now this is putting it in a curriculum within the school system so that it is a part of what they learn in the school system. So if you could go to the next slide, and then somebody else is going to take over the next slide.
So this is where we just kind of talk about Native Governance Center's involvement in our project. And so we said that Tribal Civics created the project based on feedback from elected tribal leaders. Native Governance Center recently carried out a Native Nations listening tour to gather information on Native Nations needs, and many elected leaders mentioned the need to strengthen civic engagement among their tribal citizens. The feedback Native Governance Center received during the tour aligned well with an action plan carried out by one of our Native Nation rebuilders. Cohort 9 rebuilder Levi Brown developed a Tribal Civics course. While originally tailored specifically to his Native Nation, our team worked with him and other leaders to create a Tribal Civics model available to all interested Native nations. The Oglala group worked in collaboration with NGC, Masha Reddy, Program Coordinator, and Michaela Madrid, Program Manager, Tribal Governance Support. So I think here, after we can add to this after we get through, with our project, we could probably add more here to, elaborate on our progress and everything. But the next slide, I believe, is Miss Carolyn.
Okay, so the Tribal Civics Initiative provides an overview of the fundamental changes in the political organization of the Oglala government. The tribe nation continues to see to the needs of the people and follow its traditional beliefs, and it is imperative to look after those who cannot look after themselves, and that it is better to, can't read that part, give away all that you own to care for those with nothing. To begin with, the initiative is to work with schools in implementing the curriculum with the school student council government. The end goal is to have the tribal civics incorporated within the school curriculum by 2025. I think it's important that we start this with the educational part of it, because to me, it's like these student councils and the student organizations at the college level, they do gather. They are pretty much elected, I guess. They have their own student elections within the school systems, and they elect these individuals to start their government. within the school system. So it's important that we how do I just don't want to be saying but that we incorporate these traditional beliefs, because a lot of as faculty at the college level, I find that a lot of our students don't have the values, or didn't grow up in maybe hearing about traditional ways, like maybe even how women behave, how men behave, you know, all that, and incorporating the circle of traditional government, and how our people, Lakota, I don't know about Dakota, Nakota, but I know the Lakota, there's certain ways that you within your band, I mean the Ocheti Shakoi, we follow those protocols. And so I think it's important that we include this part of it into the initiative. So maybe I'm hoping it's a ripple effect where they learn about these ways, they empower themselves. And I want to relate something back to that first slide about the fire. The preta is really sacred to us. You know, a long time ago, we carried that preta, that fire, from camp to camp. It was never, you know, it never went out. And so today, I think that's in this initiative, that's a very important symbolic act that we follow, because you know that fire, I believe, hasn't really gone out through all the generations. We still continue to carry that, you know, that fire within us, and within our tiwahes, within our tiwoshpaye, and within our oyate. So I'm hoping that with these young people, that they would, you know, learn these ways, and then take it back, and you know, maybe they'll be the change makers within our communities, you know, with the strength, with the knowledge that they will carry on to the next generation. So when you talk about Ocheti Shakoi in the next 7th generation, this is really important for them to learn their traditional ways and their governance system, as well as what the present day governance systems that we have to live with, because we have to live with the federal government law, and we have to live with state government law, and we also have to adhere to our own tribal systems, and we have to also follow our own tiwahe guidelines, as you know, what to do, what not to do. So I think this is really important, that information that will be given to our youth, and hopefully, you know, that will be carried on, and that they'll share that knowledge with others within their community. I'm done.
If you can go to the next slide. Yeah, so I'll fill in for Tuli, Dana. So basically it was important for us to be forming like the partnerships, and this is an ongoing thing. Already went into like how important it is to keep our young people engaged, and how it affects their performance and career decisions, and lifelong learning and such. So this commitment to wanting to help others and involve community groups, of course, I don't know, I get, it's just so important. And like just an example of the partnerships, and I'll get more into it later in the slide, but we're going to be looking to have meetings with the so Dana Brave Eagle, who is the tribal ed director, she meets monthly with the school administrators. So that's an example of one of the ways that we're gonna like begin to form partnerships to be able to do this initiative, this project. So just using that as an example. And if you can go to the next slide, and then we'll have updates from Elle and I at the end. The creating space. Creating a space. I don't know. Oh, Tina, Dr. Medani.
Okay, thank you. So you've kind of heard this overall inclusive, holistic approach in how we designed the overall initiative. And we gave a lot of thought. We also based it on research and not wanting to reinvent the wheel, because there's so much information already created. So how do we glean off of pertinent, culturally relevant, and having a lot of that information just kind of pulled together, because within the state standards, when we looked at curriculum, we wanted to create those crosswalks, creating those bridges that are already there. And so with that, in developing the curriculum, what we did was looked at what was the Ocheti Shakoi essentials and all the curriculum developed, which the state has accepted and adopted as a part of that. And then looking at the state standards when it comes to social studies, and that includes history, government, and so forth. And so looking at the background of civics and then how we pull it all together, and in that alignment, we want it to focus, like Caroline talked about, our student governments, our student councils, our student organizations, and they were the primary focus at this point, just because it gives us a foot in the door while we're working on developing the overall curriculum to be implemented within that traditional pedagogy that is aligned with the state standards, the Ocheti Shakoi, and then also what we're doing with civics. So with that, there was a lot of work that we put together, and we're still working towards train the trainer, and we would train the facilitators in regards to the civics curriculum. Now we designed this into 6 steps, 6 or 5 units that we are focusing on. And that is also to bring about critical thinking. So in bridging, creating those crosswalks, for example, when we talk about citizenship, we define that in today's contemporary government, but then we go back to what does that mean in traditional sense of Tioshbaye, Tiwahe, within the family units, the roles and responsibilities, as Caroline talked about, the Petra, and that we all had a role and responsibility in taking care of that so it never did go out, and how we pass that knowledge on from one generation to the next, whether it's oral tradition or not. And so how we continue those, and to have the students really think about that engagement. So not only would they participate within government with attending council, maybe standing committees, maybe attending council meetings, maybe developing resolutions that affect some of the issues in their local areas. So this curriculum is kind of focused and really pulling in the students to really gauge, if we talk about food sovereignty, and we talk about volunteering and making, food baskets. Well, why is hunger a big issue on our reservations? And so to really critically break that down and think about the underlying issues and why does it exist today? This is the whole process and purpose behind creating those crosswalks, and what is our responsibility within that. So it's been a truly learning experience in regards to how to try to pull it all together, and then at the same time make it inviting for our youth who really want to learn. And I think just the overall engagement with the leaders, the ladies at the table who help pull this together, is just a great foundation and a cornerstone that's going to proliferate this information, knowledge, and I think, just integrity in what we're doing, because this is something that's been developed by different facets within our tribal nation. So creating that space was a very important piece in making sure we're finding that balance, if you will, to move forward in a good way. So if we could go to the next slide, I've kind of basically gave you a synopsis of overall what we're trying to do to create that sustainability. Sustainability is that typically, if we do this initiative, how do we keep it going you know, not just with the student council, but this is where we wanted to develop it so it becomes curriculum within the schools and that they adopt it as a part of their curriculum. And we've already did the legwork for the schools by aligning them with the state standards and aligning it with the Ocheti Shakowing so that any school within the state can pull this curriculum and implement it within their schools. So that's the process, and that's our long-term goal in which we're really pushing and hoping that not only will we start with the group of student councils, student orgs, but we're going to work towards also hopefully implementing it within our TCUs, our tribal colleges and universities as well. So if you want to go to the next slide. And this just kind of gives you how we're incorporating our language within the defining it so that it breaks down when we talk about the crosswalks with culture, when we talk about Tioshpayes, Tiwahes, and understanding all of that. There's just like a whole curriculum of what we're saying. And we even include how much time it's going to take to give that instructions. We provide supplemental materials. We provide breakdowns that it's related to us within our communities. And we make sure that we are definitely providing alternatives in regards to what other information's provided. We even list the resources that people can go to look for more information to supplement what we're doing with the curriculum and how we align it. So definitely, like I said, a lot of work has been done, but that was, again, gleaning off of what has already been created. It's not that we have to reinvent the wheel. It's not working hard, but working smarter and knowing that all of this wonderful resources are out there. It's just how do we pull them in and make it available to our youth. So that's, I'm going to segue off of that into the next slide. And we're gonna let, so that, you know, citizens in our communities, again, talking about responsibility. So like, you know, Nakina mentioned voter registration, voting, you know, most tribal nations don't have voter registration. They rely heavily on their enrollment offices versus voter registration. So what does that mean? And what does it look like within the county? What does it look like within the state? And so, and then nationally, you know, so we'll be able to compare and contrast. But for the most part, the students are required to do a lot of reflection at the end. So not only is there activities, but there's also reflection that goes with it so that the students is able to sit back and then reflect on all what's been given to them. So that's, I think, one of the most important components that we tend to leave out is that time for reflection. So, and going back to be culturally responsible. And the next slide, I'm gonna hand over to Nakina.
To me.
Okay.
Okay, so we've already been this has been out since just before Al and I, so we're already trying to do some engagement and collecting artwork for it to be the like the logo for our project, our initiative. So this is out there. We're looking to hopefully like decide at least beginning part of February or middle of February what that will be. So, can you go to the next slide? And then so we had already presented at Al and I during the tribal ed department was able to have 2 sessions where we were all able to just kind of share the project with some of the school administrators. And from the ones that were in the room, they were very excited, very sounded like they really wanted it if we were going to be at their school. So we kind of told them what we were envisioning, the work with sharing it, and then getting, having that day where we have the training or whatever. So this is just kind of the timeline of what our updates, and we'll get into the timeline at the end. But yeah, L&I was a good kickoff, I think, to start sharing what we're trying to do. And as the time goes on, we'll be doing this a lot more. So next one. I don't remember who had it, but I could go ahead and
I do.
Jackie. Okay.
Nakina, slow down.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I'm looking at the
is-
time. We're 1 minute over. Just kidding.
Okay, I'll whiz through it because I think that slide previous was already on the second slide I have, but I'll just kind of go through it real quick. These are the resources that this is Jackie Sears, Tribal Council for Wakpamani District with the Oglala Sioux Tribe. I forgot to introduce myself earlier. The resources that we used were utilizing the Constitution of the Oglala Sioux Tribe. And also, that was a resource out of NARF. And then also we used the Oklahoma State University also as a Department of Education, I guess, out of Oklahoma. And the treaties also, Treaty of the Sioux, Brule, Ogallala, Miniconjou, Yanktonai, Hunkpapa, Blackfeet, Cuthead, Two Kettle, Sanarks, and Santee and Arapaho, 1868. And that was also out of the Oklahoma State.edu. An agreement with the Sioux, 1888, also with the Oklahoma State.edu, and the Department of Education, .southdakota.gov. So those are the resources that we did utilize on gathering information of resources that we had found and utilized them also. And I think this is kind of the timeline in which we did utilize. Our timeline is December 14th, like Nakina had stated, that we did introduce the Oglala Sioux Tribe Civics at Lakota Nation Invitational, and that process has happened. So now we're moving forward in February of 2024, schedule of train to trainer. And that work is going to be in conjunction with the 23 schools to set up the training scheduled for Tribal Civics. And also we'll be utilizing our Tribal Ed Director, Dana Brave Eagle, to help schedule those. And then also we'll be using the Tribal Ed Department again to align the Tribal Civics outcomes with the Oceti Shakoi essentials. And that's going to be coming forward also in 2024. And then the last part in February, we're hoping to go through the OST Education Standing Committee to develop a resolution to accept and support the Student Council participation with Standing Committee and Council regarding local issues. And that's going to be very imperative that, being a council rep, I will work on helping to push that forward and get that legislation enacted for our Tribal Civics. Thank you.
Next slide. And I think that's the end. So if there was questions, feedback.
Awesome. Well, virtual round of applause to you all. I know this has been so much hard work, and you all have been honestly one of our most organized, dedicated teams. So we're really excited to see this kicking off. With that, I'll pause to see if Levi or anyone from NGC has any questions or feedback to provide.
I took about 3 pages of I'm in my hotel room here, and I had that little notepad, and I got a bunch of them written down, spread out on my thing here. And I was actually just texting with Chairman Larson, just telling him how proud I am, what I was listening to here. And I just, to be honest with you, I think, you talked about, focusing on your youth in that, getting right to the foundation of your society, your community, and which is our future generation. So I think that's an awesome route to take. So one of the things that, and this is something I learned, and I'll just cover it now, or we might as well have the discussion, but is there was like, we've been doing it for 6 years now. There's this like mixing of, well, I have the knowledge because I took civics. Now I'm a leader, right? And like in our culture teaching, our teachings that we have, and I Carolyn really kind of started touching on it about change makers and our youth, and giving them those cultural teachings to have them have the ability to take those next steps and really, become leaders who make good choices, right? And not the easy choices, but the choices that need to be made. And so one of the things that I just wanted to give you guys is be cognizant of that. I mean, I don't know enough about your content and where it's, where you're going to go, but hold that cultural tie, that cultural match, or those connection points of that, like hold it close to the curriculum. Make sure that those trainers you're going to train, that they understand that baseline of it, right? That it's not just words in a book. This is who you are. This is every action we do. The creator, those above, they know what we're doing, right? It's not just one day we're indigenous, we're every day we are who we are, right? Whether you're Anishinaabe or Lakota, I mean, you are that. And I think that was one of the major things I kind of had from it, was love the whole, your step-by-step, taking it to the schools. And then that was the only thing I saw was a potential there of it getting somebody not having enough connection to the culture, that somebody kind of, for lack of better words, makes it like, oh, our government's just like the US government. Our government's just like state government. Some of the structures may be, right? But those human beings within it are not, because we live by, a different relationship with the world. And that's reflected in our culture and how we make decisions. So just want to say I caught some of that coming through there, but really emphasizing that, I think you'll find it to kind of help you in the long run, because I've had to reshape some of my cultural remindings to people, like folks who are becoming directors or managers within our institution, who are like, oh, Levi, I know a lot about our treaty now, and I'm like, okay, that's good, that's really positive, but I'm like, don't forget who you are, right? I mean, don't come into the room and lose the things that make us who we are. So with that, I'll just say miigwech, and look forward to watching this kind of go out, and please, I just hope you guys keep sharing with me, because I really love listening to it. So miigwech.
All right, thank you, Levi. Anyone else have any thoughts, feedback to share?
I can jump in, and I just want to say I think it's absolutely amazing. I see the need for this, and I wish, as me personally being an urban native and going through like the public K through 12 system, I wish I would have had access to this knowledge and this curriculum while I was growing up. But I do have a couple questions, and maybe I missed it. I'm just curious as to what age group this curriculum is designed for. Is it K through 12? Is it more of a defined age group? And then my other question, which goes kind of to sustainability, is who are the trainers going to be, and is there compensation involved? Where's the funding coming? I apologize, I'm coming in just really late listening to this, so maybe was somewhere else in the presentation that I missed. And then also Valentina mentioned that this curriculum is going to be available statewide. And I'm just curious to know, like, where is this curriculum going to live? How are the educators going to be able to access this? And then how is, where's the management of updating this and keeping it current and fresh? Where does that responsibility fall as well? So those were some of my questions I had jotted down.
Well, let me just kind of jump in real quick. So when we designed this, because we had a lot of discussion and we wanted to make sure that there was continuity and consistency. And so getting to the core of that, when we talked about train the trainer, this is where we focused on our student government groups or student orgs. And so that we as a group would train those individuals, those moderators, facilitators, whatever that role is. And typically they're an instructor anyway. So that way we would give them a quick down and dirty overview of how that to bridge that and give them the opportunity to be able to work with tribal government officials on some of these initiatives. So that's the first phase, okay? And then, so we're looking at primarily high school, 9th through 12th grade, okay? Now the curriculum's focused on high school to tribal college, so young adults. And where is this going to be housed is the question. The question that we're hoping to, our goal is that it's adopted within our tribal schools curriculums, that we get not only the schools to implement it here, starting here with the Oglalas, but that we also work with the state to help that get implemented at the state level, because we've already done the work to align it with the state standards and the Oceti Sakowin essentials. So that's our long-term goal, is that it gets implemented within state. So therefore, it does have to be reviewed. It does have to be updated. And with that, you know, right now the state is reviewing and only requires 1 credit of history. Do you know that? They only require 1 credit, you know, and I feel that, you know, maybe this is a way that we help to put more of that focus back into civics and providing a lot more supplemental information that's out there. Because I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Oceti Sakowin essentials, but what it is it gives like the breakdown of kind of the crosswalks between the culture and the curriculum, the state standards, and it even provides like other resources that they can tap into. And it provides not only videos of our elders, but traditional songs that were sung. So of those storytellings, and it really helps immerse the student into not only knowing that history, but what Levi said, you live this every day. That is who you are. This is where you come from. And so that is part of what the Oceti Sakowin is trying to establish. And we're just gleaning off of what they're doing and developing the civics and focusing primarily on what that means and trying to build those crosswalks. And so, like I said, all of that information is already established. It's just, how are we going to pull it within our tribal government? So not only are we focusing in the schools, but we're also focusing in our tribal government. So students can learn how to write resolutions, you know, and Caroline talked about those change makers. Well, that's a part of within our tribal colleges and universities, is looking at this and how are they going to be the leaders, whatever program that they choose to go in, that they are going to be the change makers, whether it's in education, whether it's in tribal government, or within our social programs that our people heavily rely on. So I hope that answers it. I know it kind of went lengthy, but there's just so much, and you can tell we're all invested. We're all invested in making that change within our tribal nation.
Yeah, I think that's really clear. And one thing that makes this initiative really exciting. Is there any other questions or comments that you wanted to add?
So again, I don't know how much of the content. One of the things, and maybe it's a quick answer, it is in the content, and I didn't see it on that 5 steps, but is there a heavy, is there some discussion around that inherent sovereignty and giving that? Okay. And the reason why I say that is because I think that was the number one thing that really had to focus on, because there's so many social norms of like, well, you're a tribal government, you had a treaty, the US government gave you something. When you get outside the res walls, it's like that big social norm is going to be a lot of pressure on young people, and those taking and having to have that discussion with somebody. I think one of the things I'm most proud of when you do this type of work is you give those citizens the tools to push back on that old narrative, right? That old historical narrative that mainstream society has about us, right? That well, somehow we got something for free. So that's all it was. It sounded like you guys took care of it. I figured you did. I was like, I don't think I would be doing a good job of helping if I didn't ask the question. So cool.
Awesome. Thanks, Levi. Cree, did you have something to add?
Yeah, and it's a lot of what I've kind of been hearing already, but I just want to uplift you all for the work that you've done so far on this and really the strengths-based approach that I'm hearing. I think especially with our youth, they hear a lot about maybe the downsides of their community or what's wrong in their community. And I think this bringing the traditional forward and carrying that forward for them is just going to make them so much more aware of who they are as individuals, but also reinstill some of that pride in their community and their nation that they can carry forward. And so I just really wanted to uplift that. And then I saw on your curriculum the little guides. And I would just say, like, anything like that that youth can like take and move forward is so helpful. Even just this year I was helping out my nephew with like a random high school petition, and he was like, how do I write a petition? So it was great to see that already in your work there.
I think we're really fortunate too that we have, what is it, 3 ex-former council women that know a lot about tribal government, and we know how tough it is to be in tribal government when you have those. And I always tell this to my students too. I always tell them I said, I don't support cliques. So if you're going to be in a clique, you better kind of check yourself, because, I don't believe in cliques. I said, I never have and I never will. So in our political system, bringing that awareness to our youth and what to expect too, as going into tribal politics, because out there, you have to be tough. If you're not tough, you're not going to survive out there. So I think giving our youth that opportunity, but also to give them that information so they know what to expect, and even your own relatives, sometimes they'll be all against you, for whatever reason. So some of those things, I think that they already went through. So I think that's an added experience to this group. I just wanted to add that. So.
Yes, absolutely. Some battle-tested folks here for sure. Michelle, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think one thing that I didn't think about until actually Jessica mentioned how she wished she had had this when she was younger in school. And I think about the opportunity that you're also making for the trainers that you'll be training to provide something that they wish they could have had too. I think that's really powerful. I think so, folks go into education with a passion and love for with a love for youth and with a love for education. So to be able to provide them with all of these tools and this really great way of reframing the value and importance and knowledge of who they are is really like going to be very impactful for your trainers too. And so I just think like, yes, of course, this is amazing for the youth, but also for the trainers. This opportunity I think will be really really powerful and exciting, and I look forward to hearing from those folks that you kind of like spread this amazing knowledge out to, and kind of where they take it and how they support the youth that they work with and what they bring back to you all.
For sure, absolutely. Well, we are coming up on our first health break moment, so we'll go ahead and pause and take about a 10-minute break so folks could come back at 6:15. Then we'll kick off with Levi with some lessons learned. Alrighty, we'll have folks come back. If you could either flip on your camera really quick or send a chat, do one of these cool emoji thingy-mabobs, just let me know that you're here and ready to move on to the next part. See some faces. All right, I think we are mostly gathered, so I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Levi.
Thanks, Raquel. So I think when I originally thought about sharing today, I really was not expecting what you guys presented today. Let's put it that way. And then I'm not saying that bad, right? Just meaning like, so when I share this part, take this and let's engage in maybe a more, you guys are definitely more advanced. So what I mean by that is stop me if I'm saying things that maybe you got curious about, please let me know so I explain them better in more detail. And so what I'm going to try to do is I'm not going to like go into the like we learned about this. I don't want to do that. I think what I really want to touch on is like kind of in the the comments I shared about your presentation. I want to like go more along those lines, expanding those comments more. So with that said, I'm going to share my screen here. And let's hopefully it works in the right way. Let's just see here. Please tell me if it's sharing. Is it? All right, now I just got to figure out how to present it without this thing being in my way. Sweet.
There should be a slideshow.
Yeah, but the team or the what do you call it's in my way? The bar from the top.
Oh, you can drag that and move it.
Yeah, I'm moving that sucker. I figured it out here. Getting there. Ah, sweet. There we go. All right. I really kind of feel like I know what I'm doing now, but so when I'm thinking about what I learned over the last 6 years and where we're at as a community, the two are intersected now, right? Like meaning, we've trained over 1,200, tribal members, employees, college students. We are actually in 2 of our school districts, and that's why I was kind of taking so many notes of everything you guys put down. One of the things that I'd learned was we needed to get down to that, that leadership / young adult leadership level. And so you're already ahead of the curve in that. So I just wanted to share that with you all, is that component was something I learned, it took 6 years to learn it, but I learned it as well. And so it's kind of one of those deals where that's why I felt you guys are very advanced. And when I was talking about, the confusion between knowledge and leadership, or those who have knowledge and information, and then that mix of what makes a good leader and how that affects our governance, how that affects our populace. I think I wanted to really talk about this conditions of rebuilding. Like when you're looking at your civics and in your initiative and what you're going to push it, I think one of the things that I learned about is without the 5 tenets and explaining that throughout the framework of the development of civics for us, I don't know if I would have been so successful. And it gets really easy to get sidetracked off of these 5 tenets, but I think the 5 tenets have been well grounded in our indigenous nations all over North America, but also too in our region. And every one of these 5 tenets I think are really important, when as you go through that kind of advancement in this course and this work and this initiative you're doing. So please don't lose sight of that. That's one thing I learned, is that I really try to always reassess our new initiative. Like when our college course comes out, like I really focused on, am I meeting the 5 tenets? Am I walking that line? are we going to do that? And I think that's one of the bigger things I learned. And
can I ask you, sorry, I
Yeah,
don't
no.
mean to interrupt,
No.
but can I ask you, in those 5 tenets that you spoke about, did you learn it? Is it more effective to have it in that order? Or what would you recommend in the introduction as you're introducing those 5 tenets? What would you say chronologically? How would you list that out?
Great. So sovereignty is the one. That's kind of what I was talking is about, that inherent, like you have to push back. I mean, even still to this day, I'll run into people who come to the reservation. They'll, people are like, oh, want to learn something? You should, talk to this person or whatever. But they're coming in and they're with this mindset that somehow we got something from the US government or we got something from somewhere else. I have to reinstitute the foundation of that sovereignty. And I think that's number one, right? Like, where does that come from? Why are we mentioned in the US Constitution? Right? Indians non-taxable. Why are we the Commerce Clause? Why can treaties be made with us and sovereign nations? Right? I mean, it's one of those things where that is like pivotal in anything you're going to, before we would start a conversation about any of the work. And then the other one is, and I think it goes hand in hand. I don't know if it's so much alone or one or two, and I shouldn't have thought about this, but that cultural match, right? That like who you are as what's the base of your beliefs and how you see the world and how you walk through the world, right? And so I think the cultural match is just there all the time, but the sovereignty is the first one that I think you have to really talk about, and then you have to match that up with those capable governing institutions. And one of the things about capable governing institutions is people have to believe in them. People have to understand them, right? And you build pride in when you look at like the treaties, who signed them. The president of the United States signed them with our chair, our chiefs, our leaders, those who were there. And I think in history that gets lost, right? About like at what level are our nations. And so if people start to believe in their institutions and where they come from, and that capability rises with that. And so I think those are there. And then from there, that's when you build off that strategic orientation, right? About like, why are we talking about this then? What does that matter? And you ground it in that with information becomes the strength of your nation, the strength of your democracy, the strength of each young person who's learning this, who will be decision maker, those generations down the road. And then that kind of gets you that part where I was saying, I think where we're at, where we have a community-driven leadership, which is good. Trust me, like that is where you want to be. But this is the one thing about, I kind of mentioned it, and I think you were talking about your change makers. Be prepared to have those conversations where you now have to say, well, we want leadership, but we want it grounded in the values for our society and how we do things and why we do things. I mean, we all have stories about why certain things are done in a certain way. I think it was great you guys shared about the role of women and men. Yes, like that has to be in your core. And so that's kind of where that leadership in there, if they're not grounded in that cultural match, you're going to be wandering through time. It's just is what it is. It's been proven when you don't have that. So Valentina, I think that's the process that you go through, but cultural match is lined all the way through it. And that was
and I appreciate that, because that's kind of when in developing the framework and the outline, definitely in the beginning was the attitudes and how do we incorporate the values and the morals and those processes that holistically, spiritually, all of this is tied together within our language as well. So all of those components come together. And for me, I was just thinking, okay, when you talk about sovereignty, are you including, those values and morals and all of that comes into it, and what our ancestors understood, what those agreements were going to be for our people,
No, and I saw that. I think that's what really, when I really just commend you all is even your content, you had your language in there, right? You had those components from which give you your identity, right? And give you your place. And I think that's the part that really was getting exciting because, I don't think Leech Lake Civics would be worth anything without our base, our culture and our worldview and applying that into those teachings. And I think if you look at anything about the tenets and why they're so important to this conversation, is we are talking about 130 years of attempted genocide on all of our people, right? The society has told us we need to be this way. Hollywood has backed it up with here's the imagery of who we, right? But never once was there ever a conversation about us in our place in what we've done. And I think that's where the work you're doing is you're going to be taking the first big steps in pushing back on that old historic false narrative. And that it's going to be tough. I mean, but I think you'll feel the fruits of all your work in just, a little short time because you're going to the right point, right? That young adults, those future leaders who are going to pick up the flag and move it just a little bit farther for that next generation. So I hope that kind of got to it, Valentina. I think, however you choose to use them, that's my thought there behind them.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
So, this is the part where, how it came together, I think matters less with where you guys are at. I just want to kind of skip through some of the things that I want to share with you in learning it, just hearing your plan and what I think you need to hear from me on this part. So one of the things I heard was about, living it. And I think that's ironic that when we look at, your train the trainer, those who are taking the course, those who are actively today engaged in it. I think it was awesome. You talked about your guys' group having 3 elected, leaders who were all women, who were battle tested, right? That to me, you're way ahead of the curve. It took me a long time to get support and battle tested. I wouldn't, and I think if you're already there with that many supporters and you're there, you'll be able to move very fast. And I think what helps when people say, well, how would you know? What do you know? If you hadn't lived it, if you weren't there ingrained in it, if you didn't have to go through it, it's really hard to tell that story. But if you've lived it, if you've made those votes, if you've been there, it's really hard for people to discredit you, right? Even if they didn't like how you voted, right? If they don't like how you voted, but you lived it, they can never say that's not you, right? You weren't part of that. And I think that's a huge thing I've learned is there were times where I think people would like to probably discredit the things, that are said, but because they all know I live them and the people who we work on our civics together, they know we're actively engaged every day in our government and our people and our society. And that's really a difficult thing to overcome for those who maybe want to be crabs in the bucket or who don't like change. Part of it, sometimes people just don't like change. And I think that, but they're comfortable. Once you get it changed, they'll settle just in, they'll be just fine. And it'll be okay. That's one thing I've learned too, is a lot of times people just end up getting comfortable and then they really are sometimes your biggest advocates. I'm going to take sometimes a little pause after each slide just to give you a moment if anybody wants to say anything or comments. So we just talked about this, but this is one of the things about that I've learned is that our worldview needs to be up front. And what I mean ours, you have your worldview, where you feel you intertwine in this big connected world that we live in. I think that the most powerful thing I can ever do or say when it comes to civic engagement in our role is talk about, not what we are as I'm Levi Brown working for, as the Office of Tribal Affairs Director. That's what I am, but it's who I am that changes, people's opinion of me, or maybe even gives them some insight to who I am. And I think that worldview is you guys already have it intertwined. So I think as long as you keep it right up front, you'll be just fine. I mean, I think that's the thing that makes, that's the special sauce per se of going through this, is that it's not just US civics, it's not just state civics or municipal civics. This is, this is yours. This belongs to you. This is your worldview. This is how, you've survived for, for time immemorial. So I think it's really important. And you guys already, like I said, language is embedded in there. So this one is probably more on the train the trainer thing about what I've learned, and I think you're going to face less hurdles and barriers just because you went to the right. I think somebody's using the term crosswalk, so you went to the right access points, and that was one of the notes I had was, you're really picking a spot where it's hard to be wrong, right? I think when you start talking to adults, it's really easy for people to want to nitpick on every little thing you do. But I think, when you're talking about our future and our generations and sharing about pride or empowerment and understanding of our own history and our own past and our own government, I mean, it's really easy to get behind that. And that momentum can carry you over the mistrust, the hurdles. The biggest thing is just going to be like keep pushing it. Don't let it sit. Do not let that movement sit. I can tell you that right now is, I think there was times I would get very frustrated and very tired and like, oh, I'm going to go, try to sell this person on it. And it gets a little bit tiring, but pretty soon it picks up its own momentum. And then it's just pulling you along. Then it's just like, hey, Levi, we got a call. We heard housing got civics, and why can't our staff get civics? And that, then it just, you don't no longer have to be doing the pushing. They're pulling you. The community is pulling you forward. And so, when you look at this aspect of hurdles and barriers, that's why I say you guys are advanced. I think you've positioned yourself to be very successful, because you're not going to have to push that hard for very long before it just rolls downhill for you. Any thoughts, questions at this point?
I appreciate the support and the feedback. I feel that, and experiencing it and then trying to develop this curriculum for the young adults and doing a lot of the legwork up front. So it makes it easier for people to say yes, because you've done all the legwork for them. You mapped everything out for them, that it makes it much more easier to collaborate, where they see themselves, they can picture of how this can be done. And I think that for us was the most time consuming part in trying to get it all aligned and making sure we're having the discussions with the right people and pulling others in. And that's why we are so grateful for the team, because Michelle and Michaela for putting together meetings, because that's the only time we could meet was like on weekends in the evenings. And we're calling on them, can you help us get this going? Because, we tried to do it and then it timed us out. It didn't allow us to share things. So, it was really helpful to have a supportive team behind us in making those meetings happen, making different resources available to us. So that was great. Knowing that there was an entity out there able to support you and provide that guidance, like you in that framework, right? So I think those key elements were beneficial and helped lay that foundation, help create the path for this construction to move forward in framing out the curriculum.
Well, it's not just you, because Michelle tends to keep me on task too. I get lost in my normal work and other things, and she's like, make sure I'm in the right spot at the right time. And I think that's where collectively, when I looked at working with NGC, out of all the groups out there, they were the one I had experience working with them, but then I believed in the mission, right? I believed in that Indian country. The stronger each tribe was, the stronger we all would be. And that's why I looked at it. And so, you know, what you guys are doing now, you know, it's just gonna, it seems like a long investment, but I mean, if you don't start now, right, it's never going to get done. No. So one of the things about like the resources for the framework that I think are, you know, that for me, I think I use different ones, but and I saw it mentioned, you guys talked about the treaties and different tools that are there, but I don't know if I saw it in there, and it's something that I didn't really clearly identify, I think, when I told you guys in the first session, but I spoke to a lot of elders, you know, and I'm sure you guys might have, I just want to mention that as like the resource that I think was there. And I think, you know, those conversations probably really helped me. Like our res is, you know, 46 miles by 70 miles. And so I talked to one elder on this side of the res and another one on this side. And when a lot of the things they were saying about leadership, a lot of things about our culture and how our worldview was matching up, those are the things I felt were valuable that I needed to make sure were in the framework and the coursework. And so just for resources, I think elders are always so valuable. And I'm sure you guys are looking at that, but
Yeah, I'd like to comment on that.
yeah, go ahead, Jackie. Sorry.
Yeah, I think the team that we have, you know, working on this, we have a lot of history, a lot of, you know, we have 3 past council reps, and we also, and I'm a current one, and we also, some of us had worked on the constitutional reform, and we did a lot of leg work out there. We were on boots on the ground, talking to people, getting input. So a lot of that, and I'm sorry we didn't put that in part of our resources, because that's where, you know, coming up with all these ideas and how to implement, you know, get this going. We used a lot of our own resources on what we heard from the public, from the community, from students in the schools. So a lot of that, you know, because we did go do a lot of presentations and we got a lot of feedback from the people. So that did help us make a lot of decisions here too on how to framework, put this all together. So I just wanted to throw that in there because it is, you know, you have Dana and you have Nakina and Tina. They all have educational backgrounds with, you know, how to develop curriculum. And so that helped also. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, I think that's what probably excites me the most is just, you know, the mixture you guys have, you know, that's the magic sauce, right? I mean, I think for me, it was, I was just wanted to like, I wanted to do something impactful. I wanted to make change. And, you know, and I remember, you know, meeting with my council members or my former council members, and they were like, oh yeah, Levi, you know, they'd worked with me for years. And they're like, yeah, you should go do that. That's great. You know, we'll support you. Tell us what you need, you know, but there wasn't a whole lot of, you know, wanting to do the work. But I think when I start talking to former council members, then I really start seeing that there was, you know, there was things they would tell me what they wish they would have done, what they wish they would have done differently, you know, and that to me was invaluable. I was like, thank you for sharing, like, you know, appreciate that, and, you know, using that. And I think, you know, just hearing your guys' mix of Jackie, I think you guys got it right. I just be honest with you, I just think you got it right.
And that is true about, you know, the council people that didn't make it back in. Now they're saying we should have supported that. We should have, you know, they had that chance to do it. But I think now some of the council that did make it back in are kind of wanting change. So we might get that support of getting this passed, very, you know, bringing the tribal civics forward. I think it has a chance to pass. I see hope anyway.
I think so. So this one, you know, what do we learn, you know, when it comes to that cultural foundation? And again, I heard it echoed throughout your entire presentation. And the thing with why I say that cultural foundation is we are working against the entire society, right? I mean, the moment your students or those who are taking the class walk out, they're going to be bombarded with some of the things that are maybe not part of our teachings, not part of our worldview. And I think that is a realistic, that is an aspect of what we're trying to change, that we have to be honest with about two people, like those in the course, those taking the course, those who are investing and supporting the course. Because if we don't have people's eyes open to that reality, there's going to be this thinking that the course will just stand alone on itself, change, everything about our nation. When in reality, it's everybody has to change. We all have to be, whether you're just the voter or somebody taking the course, a young person preparing to take these classes, a grandparent at home talking to your student or talking to a grandchild about these courses. I think that's the whole thing, is it takes time to change it. So being upfront about what you're working against, is going to be pivotal, because I think that way then leadership and the community all understand that we're in it for the long run. What was done over to our societies and our governments in our structures over the last couple hundred years, it's not going to change overnight. It's going to take some time. We're going to have to, grind down here for a few generations to get it all back. So, again, this is just like when you think about your course development, which you guys are already, sounds like you have the right people, the right folks to be in that and to be doing that work. But here's some overall just kind of things I think you have to be there on. And my favorite, one of the things, and I do it because I think it's a prideful thing, right? It's, I just never, I want to double down every time we get on that, is like, honoring your heroes, honoring the things your nation's known for, right? Like what you do and building that pride. And then also, taking the time to show, what your government does, what it does well, what it doesn't do well, and being honest and being okay that we're not going to do everything well. I mean, we're just human beings, right? I mean, some of us are wonderful, spectacular guitarists. Some of us are really good at the drum. It's just things we're good at, things we're not. And I think that human side of it is part of, I think it has to be part of the conversation in fighting against these norms. Again, when you're looking at the empowerment, and this is the part where like you really want people who are taking the course, especially if they're young people, I think you really want them to, and you mentioned it in there, talking about your responsibilities for each other, right? And I think the looking out and your change makers, those are all there. So I think, you guys are fine. You're ahead of it on this, but these are some real things that I've, over the course of 6 years, the ones that make the biggest difference. And if I learn as the other thing too is the course I teach has changed over 6 years. So a lot of what you're seeing here is what I've adapted and doubled down on, so much more, versus I spend less time talking about what's written in a treaty, and I spend a lot more time about, why knowing about the treaty is important and what power that gives you as a citizen. And that's just for me growing as an instructor, growing as a teacher, and understanding what people are looking for and what is more helpful for them. I'm not gonna spend too much time on that one. This one I think is completely, I just say this because I think it might help you, maybe in the college level area. It is, powerful questions, engaging questions, that are built into your curriculum, because they really are powerful tools. I think the only way you get to ownership in understanding what can be a very scary topic or scary issue is to have people start to get ownership in it. And the only way to get them to have ownership is to have them engage in the questions, engage in that conversation. Let them ask the questions that they've always wanted to know, because their vantage point may be much different than yours, mine, or anybody else's. And so meeting them where they're at is so impactful. And I've seen that really change over the cohorts that I work with. or no, when I mean cohorts, I mean like the Leech Lake staff that go through our Leech Lake Civics. They're each different cohorts, and like I've really seen them grow each differently because they just started in different places. Like I just did a course last month in December, and there was not a single staff member in that room. Out of the 18 people in that room, there was not a staff member over 38. I mean, so that tells me that there was nobody really knew what it was to be pre-gaming in our community. And that's a different concept. That's a different conversation than having somebody who lived most of their life prior to gaming, because our community was just different. So any questions on that one? I know that one kind of be convoluted about the questions are empowering, but and I'll make sure to share these slides with you all so you have access to them. So this one's just interesting because I think for me, sorry if I'm getting this out, I'm trying to get this out of the way, if I'm doing a good job of it. Every day when I use Mentimeter and ask questions, and I think this would be good for is if you've ever not used Mentimeter, but you try to use it in your community engagement, it's a great tool. You know, and I think it's helped me. I use it a lot of different awkward ways with our local Indian council. When I say awkward, I mean it like sometimes at first they're like, "What are you getting at, Levi? Why are you asking us these questions?" You know, and I just tell them the truth. I was like, "I'm trying to figure out where we're at, like what what we're doing," and I think that's you know, kind of relevant or kind of comes out clear in these questions, right? Like, what would you want your governmental powers spread out? You know, how often do you hear people talk about, you know, council maybe having too much power sometimes, or certain people having too much power, you know, and you see this, and it's like the overall majority, you know, I think on this, out of the 16 people that answer that question, one person was just joking, you know, and says, "Oh, no, I want a queen," right? But the vast majority was like, "Yes, you know, we want everybody's voice to be heard." You know, if leadership knows that, if that becomes a norm of your governance, you start to change things, right? People start to be more patient with each other, listening to each other. And that gets us back to our cultural match, you know, being humble and being patient with each other. And then what's really cool is on the left side over there, it says, "What's the purpose of the Leech Lake government?" Look at the lowest one of the percentage there, right? You know, these are like, they're given the option to swipe all the way over if they feel strongly about it and use all 5 points that way, or they can do these other ones. And you look at, to give out money is only 1.7, and establish programs and social programs and laws, ensure justice for all, are both the same and slid to the right, almost 4.0. If you were to read social media on my res, if you were to read it, you would think that our government was solely there just to give out money, because that's sometimes like a lot of folks are always like, "Oh, we should have a per cap, we should do this." You know, in reality, that's not what the majority of people want. You know, that's not what their strongest feeling is. And that's, again, has to do with engaging questions, kind of more to get to know each other. But I just wanted to share that because I think, you know, if you get a chance to use a tool to help in your community engagement over time and help you really share information with people, it can be very helpful.
You know, I find that interesting because when we were on council, Nakina we'd use SurveyMonkey a lot. And she would do quick little surveys on some really heated issues and trying to get the people's feedback. But it was also a way to kind of shape the conversation as well, and how we were looking at different legislation and how we wanted to move it forward. So not only for the community or the constituents, but primarily for council. So like you said, council is going to kind of gauge and see where they should be voting on some of these issues, you know. So it is helpful in having those visible indicators out there. And the other thing is you know, Nakina, just having that data, remember, you know, and being able to share those polls. You want to speak a little bit to that? Because we did we did surveys before even doing this, right, Nakina?
Yeah, so like how do I say this? Like yeah. I just thought like because I wasn't able to engage like all my constituents. So having a variety of different ways to get their feedback. So that was just one way, of course, like going to the district offices and getting feedback that way, but this really enabled engage them a lot more. And I still get people, so I haven't been in office for 2 years. I don't even know how long it's been. I joke because I say I'm still recovering. I keep telling people that. Um, but I still get people that reach out to me and want me to keep my page because there's not anybody that had continued to do that. So I still do it. It's a way to keep them actively engaged and I like it's really to build and support the framework and the curriculum, asking the people's input because once they have a voice, then they're gonna keep, then they do participate. So
I couldn't agree with you more, Lakina, that aspect of using that voice and having it. I mean, that's one of the things I've learned. It's been most beneficial is that there are so many people now who feel they have a voice and they understand what that voice is and how to use it. It's just very empowering. So so again, I think you always have to have a contrast in anything you do. You can get lost pretty easy and just like, hey, here's the tone of what it is. I think with our history, where we were when we interacted with US to where we're at today to where we want to go, I think at the beginning step, you really have to make sure that contrast exists so people can see the difference and what we're trying to change. Because in reality, we are really truly trying to change things. I mean, that's just the reality of it. Again, this kind of goes back to like the information you have and why I saw in your guys' breakdown there, you're talking about your government, how it is, how it meets your cultural match. Again, putting your government at the proper level, cannot stress. I mean, that's just like the number one is just, I mean, I remember about 4 years ago, we were having this conversation and it actually come up in a civics class where somebody had talked about the flag in the high school, that the American flag was higher than all the other flags. And it was supposed to be that way. And one of the young tribal, members was like, well, aren't we at the same level as the U.S. government? Shouldn't our flag be at the same level? And it seems really like, okay, it seems pretty simple. But at the time, there was a tremendous amount of pushback to do that, And I think that was just because it was 100-something years of us getting, treated paternalistic by the federal government and us just stepping on and recognizing our own government and putting that at the proper level. So it's just a quick short story about why I think it's really important is you share all this, information, how the government works, what it does, by putting it at the right level, you can really get at those kind of the false narratives that have been presented around our governments. One of the things about our current issues and where we are, and I think you have to have a component of current issues because we're not stuck in time, right? Like as civics, as civilians, as our governments, our societies, is that our world sometimes has things that matter, that we care more about than somebody else might care about. And it's not to say they're less important, but it's like we matter in this world. For 100-something years, they try to hide us, put us on reservations, leave us there, throw away the key, but we are here, right? In this day and time. And I think, a big takeaway I had was that, all the stuff we talked about currently, it was more important because it really identified the contemporary place we had in the struggles we had. And it doesn't always have to be negative, but it was, one of those things where, identifying those issues up front about, what our current issue was, really help people kind of put a context to why we matter. This is probably more for a college type aspect of it. And this is something I do a lot because we're now in the ebbs and flows, right? So we're going into our 7th year of this course and what we're teaching. And we had this high rise and a plateau. What I mean by high rise, it was like, all right, we're gonna start a Leech Lake Days. We have a Leech Lake Days. We're gonna take our sovereignty day off. Like we're gonna take the day of Christopher Columbus, and we're gonna have that now be, more of a Leech Lake Day that we just have off for that. We're gonna the last time we battled with the U.S. government in 1898, we're gonna have that day. We're gonna celebrate that day. It was like we started celebrating all the stuff about us, and that kind of plateaued with there. But now you're getting to that part where there's new people coming in, younger generations coming up who need to understand what it took just to even have those type of events. And that creates a new conversation. And you constantly have to ask yourself, are we weakening? Are we strengthening our government? What are we doing daily? What are we doing current? And that kind of goes to our current issues. And I think that's really important when you talk about civics, because it gets to the core of why you even want to talk about our civics. Is we're really trying to ensure we have an empowered populace, which makes sure that we have a strong nation. And the only way to have that is you have a strong government. But a government that is, let's put this, let me make sure I'm clear on this, because I want you guys to know this. A government that is strength is projected outwards, not necessarily always inwards, right? Like I have to remind our government all the time of being very burdensome on our own people and not pushing and looking externally enough. Like you got to have that balance, and you got to make sure the majority of it's pushing outwards and not being so oppressive to our own people, because it is very easy to fall into that trap. And I think that's where this conversation you're looking at here, this is what you have to talk about it for. Any questions on that kind of conversation there? That's a really important part of the long-term part of it. You guys are just getting started, so you'll ride that rise for a while, but you're going to get to the point where somebody's going to ask why, what's the point? And you got to remind them that our governments can be very oppressive, or we can fall back into something because it was done to us for a long time. All right.
I think that's a very good point, because going into this, when we started to do constitutional reform, it kind of played back to the oppressed becomes the oppressor, right? And that learned behavior, and how that kind of continues at all different levels within our government, within our tribal government, and understanding, that this Constitution that was forced upon us wasn't really accepted. So understanding that history and what does it mean today? What does that Constitution mean today? So after over 100 and some years, shouldn't we make that Constitution a Constitution of the people? So, looking long term, how are they going to help shape the change of constitutional reform for the future? And to have it at that level where they are the actors in making that change happen, making those revisions a reality. So, and then the responsibility of that, not only do you make that change, but how do you grasp it, institutionalize it, and follow through with it? Because in a lot of our things, we do a lot of talking, but we do no action and follow through. So the follow through, engaging, that's the other part, is the assessments. How are we knowing that we've reached that level? Where's the assessments at? And that's the other part, that in this process, what tools are we using to really assess if we're meeting those priorities and those benchmarks?
Completely agree, okay, thank you. I just loved it when you said responsibility and institutionalized, because those are like, when I'm presenting and having this conversation, it's like those are real core elements. So thanks. The recipe for success, this is like, some general real out there, not out there, but I meant like they're not. They're just things I look at from a long distance, right? Of what I've learned is, the first part is just give people time. Some of this is going to be very tough for people to really get behind because they've been so oppressed. And I'm just being honest. I mean, that's the pushing you're going to have to do, but you get enough people who are more ready for it, and that critical mass picks up, that becomes less, of a barrier. But it will be there. I promise you. Like, you're going to run into it, and it's not their fault. It's really not. It's what our people have gone through, and you just got to make space for that. And you got to be realistic with it. I think the other one that I maybe share with you guys, because the rest of these are, you can read, just see them that are there, but really try to get those. If you're targeting right off the bat with your younger people, which is, I said, great, get them to be okay with the good and the bad, and I think that's going to go into your cultural ties aspect of it. But I've learned in my time that those younger folks coming in, just entering, whether it's the college or, our workforce, wherever they might be interacting with the civics course and having these kind of conversations, they're really stuck on this, that we have to be perfect the first time, and we have to be perfect, and we've got to do this. And I think, that's where I try to, give them the cultural insight to how they should, it's okay to make mistakes, and that's part of being a human being. And I think, so for you all, in your cultural match, try to find out where that is, and make sure that becomes a kind of a cornerstone, because I think it helps you it helps you down the road, helps you really have them prepared to have that conversation, because today's world, the pressures they're all under, it's pretty immense. And well, in wrapping up my whole kind of, no, I'm not gonna do that one. Let me see this whole thing, and can I ask you, is the faces in the way, or am I just making a habit of moving them? They're not. You guys, okay, because on my screen, your guys' faces are covering up the thing, and I'm like taking time to move it around. So anyways, kind of a dumb point to ask on the last slide, but I did anyways. But what we've learned, and I say we because, it's not just me doing, I may be the lead instructor, and, but there are so many people in the community, and I see it in their social media posts. I see it in their wanting to engage and do, work within the community. It doesn't always have to be in the government. They're just doing different things, whether it's setting up their own basketball camp, making sure that at the Apollo they're focusing on cleaner, on our treaty rights and teaching about our treaty rights. I mean, just the difference of engagement has been so much more, and that's why I'll say we. And so these are kind of the things that we've learned is everybody wants to succeed. Like, at the end of the day, you want to ask every tribal member on Leech Lake, do you want Leech Lake to be, great and succeed? They're all going to say, yeah. Now they may say, but, and then they'll go on to all the stuff of why it can't happen or what might have happened. Or maybe even that they don't want their ex-boyfriend or ex-girlfriend to succeed. I mean, it just is what it is. But at the end of the day, you ask them, the overall population will say, yeah. And that they don't want to stop trying. But if they're not able to access, and that's this third bullet, they're not able to access our stories and our teachings and our culture and our, I mean, that is yours. They're not able to access that. They will drink whatever's put in front of them. They will consume whatever information somebody puts in front of them. And that's what's happened to us for a lot of generations, is we haven't prioritized our stories, our cultural teachings, our governance. And the fifth one that you see, morals affect governance. I don't know if you guys read this, and I was just lecturing about this at our college the other day, is, the Pope did away with the doctrine of discovery. you know, one of the main kind of frameworks of the doctrine of discovery was that non-Christian, you know, savage people were incapable of governing. And you look at what was, you know, the Indian law and everything that goes with it, is that had a huge impact to who we are in our nations, you know, right, of how that kind of shaped us in the way the federal government treated us as incapable of governing. And so I think when you look at the morals affect governance, you know, that cultural teaching covers that, right, about how moralistic we are as a people and how connected we are all together. And then kind of bringing it full circle is that, you know, never be afraid to just wear your love for your home and your people on your sleeve. I think, you know, my biggest defense has always been when people really want to be, you know, hateful to each other. And I say that because they do. I mean, there are people who just for generation, you know, a couple of generations maybe don't like each other for whatever reason. I've nothing to do with it, but it is what it is. If you just remind them that we all have a common nation and, you know, that binds us, tends to de-escalate a lot of that. So with that saying, I will stop and pause. I think I'm a little ahead of schedule, a few minutes, but maybe any questions, any final thoughts on some of that?
Yeah, any questions for Levi? You'll have another chance as well. So maybe what we'll do is just do our short little 5-minute last health break. And then when we come back, we can go through any questions folks have. Does that sound good? Cool. So we'll have everybody come back at 7:15. So we'll give you 10 minutes. So see you in 10 minutes. Alrighty. So we'll go ahead and get started for our final section. So again, if folks just want to flip on their cameras really quick, send me an emoji, something in the chat so we know folks are there. Great, happy to see your faces. All right, so Levi just spent the last little bit kind of talking about some lessons learned. We're gonna kind of transition into thinking about sustainability and kind of moving forward and how to make sure your initiative really thrives into the future. So, did anybody have any questions first before we pass it back over to Levi? Deep musings during the break that you came up with.
I think one thing that I want to make a comment is when you talk about ownership, I think providing a safe space, I guess, is what I think most people, I guess, I don't know, in perspective, I think that's what they want to make the change, because a lot of times they say they want to, but I think they don't feel safe or they don't feel supported. So they're unable to go forward with it. And so I think if you have that supportive group or like these young people, hopefully they'll form that bond early and then they can support each other through making those changes. I just think that's one thing that really holds, and ourselves, I mean, a lot of us, I mean, I think we challenge it and we oftentimes we have to make change. And I always tell, you know, my students that, yeah, change is hard, change is scary, but we all change. We all have to go through that change. We can't stay, you know, we can't stay, how would you say that, stagnant. We can't just stay in that old ways or whatever. We have to continue to adapt and we have to continue to move forward. So I just wanted to add that.
Yes, absolutely.
Carolyn, you know, one of the things that I think was like upfront and when I first started teaching the courses was I had to be very like, I had to point it out that it was a safe space. You know, like the first few years, it really had to be that. You know, you had to say that. Now so much, you know, I think people are, that's getting that critical mass. You know, I think it's less. I mean, I still remind people, but I spend less time on it. And I think that's, you know, glad you were thinking about that because I didn't even mention that, and it is almost just creating room for them to be able to make the change or be part of that change, right? I mean, it's a big step. So thanks, Carolyn, for sharing that.
Absolutely. Anything else?
I just wanted to say that what Carolyn was saying about creating a safe space is that's what these ladies have actually done while we were creating this curriculum, and me being a younger person and being on student government at OLC and kind of coming full circle back now to working with the tribe. I just want to thank these ladies for just exemplifying being a good relative and role model to me, and I've learned so much throughout this process, and I was just so humbled to be a part of this, and that safe space was a part of the civics project, so I just wanted to share that.
That's really beautiful. Thanks for sharing that, Cassandra. Any other questions or comments for Levi? Cool.
Levi, in regards to, cultural curriculum and so forth, did you work with your local college in aligning those standards with your curriculum? Or as far as the culture, you said you spoke with some elders. I mean, we've kind of done that. Plus, like Caroline has been our foundation for helping us with finding the correct translation, because there isn't always a contemporary translation within our language for civics, right? So Caroline's been helping us in how we come up with new terminology in Lakota for like civics, and looking at how we're defining those units, So with that, I mean, often we can't go back to things. It's just how do we move forward? And like she said, creating that safe space, but also trying to develop something new. And sometimes that's a struggle. It's been a struggle for us. Is like, how would you translate that, And so her and I will sit there and I'll ask her, what do you think about this? Or how would we translate this? And so these are some of our discussions of, because we're creating something new that hasn't been adopted yet or hasn't been commonly used, if you will. So when you talk about language, where did you really get your alignment and endorsement to use within the curriculum?
So the language part, I'll tell you, I went and talked to two elders about this, and the first one tells me, and I'll just be frank with you, he says, we used to be able to, we just knew who each other were, right? We knew we had our stories, our teachings, what it was. Every aspect of our life was a teaching. It had to do with how we lived life, how we interacted with all living beings, including other Anishinaabe, other people. He said, only the white man would come up with a word that has to tell us and reteach us how to do the government. And that's what he told me. I mean, that's flat out what he told me, because he's like, we don't have a word for being who we should be, like the civics part. I mean, and I was kind of like, oh, okay, well, it's an answer, And I went and talked to another elder who, I hunt and fish a lot with. And we were netting, and he was talking to me about, sometimes he said, your generation, these are the words you've been taught. Whether you like it or not, this is a word that's yours. And he said, the next generation, maybe they will use a different word, to describe something. But as long as you have Mino Bimadizi win, as long as you understand that good life, that worldview of who we should be as Anishinaabe, he said the white man title to that doesn't matter. That English title matters less, because it's actually your actions you have and how you go about the business you're going to do that's going to matter in all of that. He said, the Western world I'm sorry if I'm saying, but this is just how the government, he said, the white man will tell you that you need to have a fancy title. That's TV, that's television, they're selling something. He said, you should sell it in your actions. That's what the second one told me. And so for the language, I'll tell you that I just picked Leech Lake Civics because it was the name of our res, and a tribal elder told me it was my generation's word, and it's what everybody from elementary school to college could understand. They would know what that was about, and he wasn't lying. I mean, it was true. And then the part about like our culture and our language, how we tied it in there, was I was raised by my grandfather, and so growing up as a young boy, they were still part of that generation. They spoke just Ojibwe. That's all they spoke. And I guess I ask permission to use any words. I more or less, those who were still part of that group who were original speakers and who were there, I knew them. As a little boy, I grew up with them, so they knew who I was. And so I just applied it in a way that reflected who we were. And I didn't try to make it any more than what it was. I hope that kind of answers the question. That when I tell people that, they're always like, well, that's just how you made it. I was like, yeah, it's as simple as that. Nothing special, just kind of as simple as that.
I mean, I agree. I just, it's kind of difficult because for the most part, it's not their first language. So then they want to have, in the academic world, they want legitimacy, right? Yep. And integrity that you have to put as part of the curriculum in the language, and where is it coming from, and what orthography, as you know, there's debates about orthography and language, and who's being recognized for what curriculum and so forth. So that's why I just asked if there was a process that you went through and how you incorporate it within the curriculum so that it was a little bit more easy to accept, or, like you said, I mean, because we're going through, and like Caroline, she visits with, and I'll let you speak to that, Caroline, of how you kind of develop some of the language, some of the vocabulary.
I think for our language, it's sometimes it's, I guess you can say it's informal and formal, and then we do it's kind of more descriptive, more like action words. So I think sometimes, like Tina said, we go back and forth, and she says, well, if you could find another word in Lakota that would, that you can translate into. So I really have to think about what that word means. And a lot of times in our language, we really can't translate, or that particular English word, like you said, it's something that the English speaking people developed. It's their language. So we're just trying to, I guess, translate as best as we can. And sometimes there is no translation. So you just have to do your best, and maybe the description of that word, or what that meaning is, what does that word really mean? What are you doing within the context of that word? So I think that's probably the difficult part. And she asked me to, when we were doing the what do they call that Constitution, I had to do a lot of that translation too. So that was really, really difficult because we don't have words like judicial and, all of that stuff. Land based, I mean, stuff like that. So I had to search, and I would ask people, how would you describe this? And they would describe it to me, how they would say it. So a lot of the translation was from community members too. And you have to remember that we come from all different bands. So there's, like, on our side, we say words in a different way than the ones on the eastern side of the reservation too. So there has to be kind of that, balance and understanding and recognizing where the words come from, even describing our own communities, so because here where I live, everybody always wants to call it number 6, and that was just the name of the school, right? And it's only like, I would say about maybe not even 2 miles, but everybody uses that description from past Oglala all the way to this bridge, and that's not right. So I'm always correcting them. And then even that, this community is called Shikshichala, but a lot of people don't know that history. So I think when you're doing work like this too, to kind of know your history, know your identity, know where you come from, what is acceptable and not really acceptable. How much do you share and how much do you not share? So I think those are the challenges that we go through. And I'm always asked to translate a lot of times, and then also to pray a lot. So I always tell people, you know how to pray, everybody knows how to pray, but just because I speak my language, I'm automatically designated as the person that's always doing the prayers. And I always tell them that too, you know how to pray. So when I have students in culture class, our language, I always, let them know, let's learn about prayer, because someday you're going to be asked to, do a prayer. I mean, I don't refuse, but I just think that's just kind of hilarious in a way, because, we all know how to pray, we pray every day, but it's like you get designated as that person that's always got to do the prayer. So, those are just some of the challenges and successes too, because I think in a way, when we include our language, we know that it's not going to get lost. You know what I mean? Because that's always been my fear is, we're going to lose our language, because I think we have a pretty good, base of language speakers. But if you're a second language acquisition or whatever second language speaker, so when I teach Lakota class, I have to really how gauge their levels. What do you expect from this class? What are your expectations? How do you learn? So we explore all of that, during class. If this is how you learn visually, we'll do things visually, we'll do things, differently, however you want to learn. Because when I first taught my language class, I really expected, I really had these high expectations of my students. And when they couldn't reach that, I was kind of really frustrated, until one of my children, my daughter, said, why are you expecting them to speak like that? Because just because you're a speaker, give them a chance to, catch up to where your level is at. So that kind of humbled me. So now I really try to gauge everybody's levels of language, whether they're beginning, whether they hear it at home, or but I think that really affects our learning too. Even if we're not speakers, we hear that, or we have that indigenous thought. And so I think a lot of times, even I do that, like I would talk and I would say, I said at the end, and that's not, that's not how we're taught to speak English, but I still do that. And then like, for us, we would always add that ED to the end, so I ended it, stuff like that. So I just, it's really, I don't know. I guess sometimes I consider myself fortunate in having these opportunities to make an impact, even if it's just one person that you impacted, it's going to go a long ways for them to share that knowledge. So, okay, I could talk forever too. So thank you.
Well, I think, Valentina, what Carolyn is talking about is, it kind of answers that question, right? Like, you're going to face that. And I think I faced it less, just strictly because everybody knew who I was. My former position before I started this as our environmental land director, I mean, I touched everybody, right? They all knew who I was and who my family was. And I think it made it harder for anybody who wanted to like academically challenge that conversation. I do know that there was one individual who had talked about using language in talking about government and had some negative things to say about it. And I went and met this person. And it was after I talked to my grandma about it, but I went and met with this person and just said, hey, I saw what you had wrote on social media, tell me what you think about it. and they told me that, that's not how you talk about, certain things, and that's not how you should use those words. And, and I said, well, there's other folks who don't share that opinion. And what was really kind of funny was he goes, yeah, I know your grandma talked to me. And I said, what do you mean my grandma talked to me? What did she say? She said, she asked if my last name was Webster Merriam. And I was like, what do you mean? And he said, God, your grandma embarrassed me and asked if I owned the dictionary, and I owned all the Ojibwe words and Ojibwe Mo. And it was just kind of like, and that's kind of what I'm getting at, is that our communities, the action we're doing is the actual, what we're trying to do, right? And I think, that's the part of, we don't want our languages to die, and we shouldn't, our sure as heck shouldn't put the fear in some of our young people to use that language and make mistakes. We don't penalize our babies when they're learning to speak and, for making mistakes. If anything, we cheer them on, we encourage them to use them more. And that's kind of how it was explained to me. That's how I talked to this person about it. And, this person now, when I talk about civics, is nothing but glowing things to say. And I think it was just making that room to pull them aside, talk to them about it, and make sure they understood what we were, what the goal was. We weren't trying to change Ojibwe Mo or give it anything more than how we saw the world. So thanks for sharing that, Carolyn. That was helpful. Thanks.
What else? Any other questions, thoughts? Right. Well, always can post in the chat if anything comes up. So I know we're coming close on our time, but Levi, was there any kind of parting advice you want to share about sustainability, kind of continuing your civics into the next 7 generations?
Yeah, the first thing I had was, you were talking about institutionalizing it, what you're doing with the schools and getting it to match up state law. But is there any inkling or thought? I mean, maybe I missed it was in there, but having, tribal law match that, having something in your tribal law that, okay, yeah, I mean, that I could tell you is a real big deal. But other than that, I think sustainability, you have in your content you put together, that is your sustainability map, right? Getting people to be prideful in who they are and using their language is your sustainability. Which we just talked about for the last 20 minutes. So that's what I have, Mikhail. I just appreciate you guys sharing so much and being willing to allow me to share. And I'm going to keep an eye on you. I'm going to be watching you guys, because I think it's it's pretty cool. And I'm going to actually go back to our group, and I'm going to really talk about putting more emphasis on that middle school to high school area. I think that we could do more there. I like the way you guys put that.
Absolutely, yeah. We're so proud of this team. I know I've said it a million times, but you've really just kind of blown us away with all that you've put together, kind of the intentionality that you all have had behind all of your decisions and all of your teamwork. And so we have just a couple things to share about, just kind of some general tips around sustainability and implementation tips. So, always be open to trying new things. One of the things that Levi kind of touched on is that we can sometimes have this like fear of ever starting or trying things because we don't want to do the wrong thing. And so we know, like we've talked about, we have teachings even in our beadwork of like a spirit bead where we always are putting that intentional mistake in there, recognizing the fact that we're human, we're never going to create anything that's perfect, and so it shouldn't stop us from moving forward, from being open to new ideas. So tied to that, kind of just always constantly adjusting based on feedback and evolving community needs. It's one thing to, even though we're community members and know kind of what our community face, it's easy to think we know everything. And then once you kind of get out there in the community doing this work, I'm sure you'll find other issues that maybe you don't experience personally or weren't aware of. Also, just the context of our communities change so quickly in this day and age. I mean, think about kind of of what were you doing in the like month before the world shut down because of the pandemic. Think of how much our lives have changed because of that. And so always being willing to adjust to new contexts. Also, just being gentle with yourselves and not taking on too much. I say this as several of you have mentioned how many things you're doing like at this moment. But I know you're all passionate, engaged people, and it can be really tempting to kind of overextend yourself because we love and believe in our people so much. But you really don't pay anyone favors by sacrificing yourself. So this work being out in front of community is hard. Engaging in these really hard, honest conversations is difficult work. So I welcome you to, after your events, just schedule some you time. Take care of yourself, do some self-care. I know, like, for example, this week Michelle and I have a couple different workshops this week, and so like Thursday I've already like taken it off. Like I'm not going to be working on Thursday, just to be able to kind of pour into myself, so that we can pour into others. And then just kind of last, keep track of the small things, but also don't get lost in the weeds and forget the picture. So of course we want to keep all of the details moving, have those task masters, but sometimes we can get so fixated on small things like flyers or posters or presentations that we kind of forget to take a step back and think about what that larger picture is. So always keeping kind of that end goal, big vision in mind. So on the next slide, we're going to be going into our closing and next steps. So, as you all are aware, we always love to get your input. Actually, I'm supposed to pass this over to Michelle for our survey. So, Michelle, take it away.
You were doing it so well. I didn't want to interrupt, but like Michaela said, we love a survey and to get feedback from you all. So if you could go ahead and go to Menti, and I'll go ahead and get the link dropped in the chat so you can click on it easily and follow through. This survey is actually a two-parter now, so it's a little bit longer than the normal ones that we've done with you all. The first half of the survey is about tonight's workshop, and then the second half of the survey is just some questions about the overall workshop experience. Kind of taking the advice that we just shared with you, we are also working to continuously improve the workshop series so that it can be as successful as possible with each cohort that we participate with. So I will go ahead and turn on some music now and let y'all work on the survey.
And we do have some updates after the survey, so don't leave quite yet.
Drop the kids off and go party gets me mad, so I pray for peace and pray for change. Keep on praying when everything stays the same, and I pray for the pastors and all of the churches and those who cry nights on following hearses. I pray for you, pray for the sick and the poor, pray for the rich man who don't give to the Lord, and I pray for wisdom, and I pray for power, and I pray we'll be ready in the final hour, and I pray for those who keep judging ministry, and I pray for my friends and my enemies.
People over 50 years of age could dance. Most people do not know this, that the government forbid children to dance Indian. And that was so they could wipe out the culture and the young people, and then finally the new generation would never know what happened,
Don't you even know how to be a real Indian?
I guess not.
Oh shit, no wonder, jeez. I guess I'll have to teach you then, ain't it?
All right, so I see responses coming in. If you don't mind just kind of keeping that tab open so you can complete it after we're done here, we'll just go through these couple slides that we have so we can get going for the night. So, um, yeah, thank you for filling that out so far. It's so helpful to us to get your feedback as we constantly try to improve our workshop. So now that you all are kind of through the workshop series, through the action planning, we want you to know that you're not finished with us yet, or ever if we have anything to say with it. So we do offer kind of continued general support. So officially, we can offer 4 hours of general support for 1 year after action planning session. But I will say that, if you come to us 1.5 years from now, or if you want 5 hours, like we're not really counting that closely. We just want you to know that like we're here and available for you in really whatever way you want. And so, if you want to just get together on a quick call to maybe strategize about an issue that's come up or an opportunity that's come up. If something, there's maybe some tools that you would like some deep dive support on, we can go through those as well. So just if there's stuff that you all want help with that's not on this general support list, just let us know. We're really here for you and cheering for you to make your initiative as successful as possible. So then in addition to kind of general support, we also offer a grant. And so I believe that's on the next slide. Um, Oh, nope. Well, I'm going to talk about the cross cohort gathering next. So the cross cohort gathering, you all attended that in December. We're going to do that again next year in November. We're also trying to think of creative other ways that we can connect the different cohorts together since that cross cohort gathering was so strong. So really excited to offer that space again. And then the next slide, I think, is about the grant. Oh, nope. Okay. Well, I'm just going to talk about the grant. So, we we are really excited to be able to offer you all some money to be able to support your work. We'll send a link to kind of the application after this so that you all have that. It's a really simple just form, kind of just letting us know roughly what you need the money for, how you plan to use it, things of that nature. So since we don't have the slide, do you guys have any questions about that or any of the other support that we can offer?
Yes, in regards to, like you said, the deep dive technical support, I think in regards to the curriculum, can we see a copy, of Leech Lake's curriculum?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what he has, but we can definitely send you whatever he's got. And I know Levi's super open and excited to engage with folks too. So it might just be like he said he uses Menti, which is pretty much just like obviously you've used Menti through us. And so if anything, it might just be his slides that he uses for that. Michelle, do you know if there's anything more?
I don't know. And so that is something I know he dropped his phone and his email in the chat, and we can definitely follow up with him too. But I think all that I've seen are the
He just became my friend on Facebook, so
Oh my gosh,
I'll reach out and
yay!
to ask him.
There you go. Perfect.
That's all I wanted to kind of see if there's something that I can glean off of, learn from, making sure, that I'm not over analyzing. I tend to do that. And then also what kind of assessments are in place to see, are they reaching those benchmarks? So, in regards to that, I want to see what kind of instruments have been used, what type of assessments.
Mm. Yeah, I definitely think he'd be open to talking more about that. I mean, I know they run it through their HR department at the band there, and so they might have some kind of data on that as well.
That'd be awesome. I appreciate that. And then you'll send us this overall PowerPoint and the information from that, the discussion.
Yep, yeah. So Michelle's been taking some notes throughout our discussion, so we'll be able to send that out in addition to the link for the grant. And so, also as a reminder, the grant is a $2,500 opportunity for you all, and it can be paid either to an individual or an organization. Of course, there are different tax implications. So if it goes to an individual, because it's over that like IRS threshold, you would have to personally pay taxes on it. So if there's a way for it to go to an organization or entity, I would recommend that, but it's up to you all how you want to do that.
I think we've already discussed that, and it'd probably go through our tribal education program. It'd go through Miss Dana's program and how we were going to utilize the funds.
Yeah, that's perfect. Dana, I saw you went green for a second. You're muted if you're trying to talk.
No, I was just gonna say I have the tribe's W-9, but I'm sure we can attach that to our application.
Yeah, for sure. It's a real competitive grant, so we'll put a word in with the committee to make sure that you get it. But and I mean, in full transparency, no one's actually taken the grant before. Our first team didn't finish. Our second team has like rules against being able to accept outside funds, and so I just say that as in like we're going to be learning about this alongside you all. So just to be transparent there.
Well, just something I'd like to throw out there and kind of something I see is being able to put money aside for like when we do this train the trainers, and then to be able to have money that the kids can, they have a civic project that they want to do. So hey, like right up, like same thing you're doing here, then that's $200 to go do what you want to do in your district. That I'm just using that as an example of something I'm envisioning once we get to that point. So
Yeah, that's exciting. Spread the wealth.
yep.
Right. Any other questions, comments, concerns, musings? If not, we'll go ahead to our final last closing quote from the great Miss Tina Merdanian. So here Tina shares, our ancestors left us these tracks. We know these paths. They're off the beaten road, but we know they're there. We know they exist. It's time to start utilizing those paths. So all that's to say is, we've been here before as a people. Civics feels like something new, but kind of taking care and taking charge of our communities isn't anything new to our communities. So just really lean into that knowledge, that kind of blood knowledge that we've been here before and you know what to do, along with a nice picture of a hike in Haisapa. So that is all we have for you. Feels weird to be wrapping up, but we're so grateful again for all the time we've had. And yeah, we'll hear from us again soon.
Well, I want to say thank you, ladies. It's been inspiring, and I'm very, very grateful to be working with each and every one of you. And that, this is not that it's done. It's just that we've completed one section of this journey, and we're moving to the next section. So we're not counting you out. You're not getting rid of us that easily. So
perfect.
We'll be calling on you ladies to assist us with other meetings and in other parts of how we move this forward within the curriculum and so forth. So we definitely know that you're appreciated and definitely needed
in this process.
Yes, definitely not a goodbye. We're just kind of setting you off to begin your journey. So, really grateful for that. All right.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.